Hello, I'm Norva Ragnor and welcome to another custom video. Today I was hoping to be able to finish my Gears and Mario crossover line by giving Mario, Luigi and Peach someone to fight against. I was going to create a Locust variant Bowser, which I was looking forward to making the most out of the 4 figures. I was going to use the flame grenaded body I had spare from the Locust Flame Boomer custom video. My original concept idea had Bowser in Pharaon armor, as Pharaons are awesome. I have plenty of spare Pharaons, but Bowser's head is just too big for the figure, and while I was going over the Flame Grenadier figure, I realised the arm joint was quite stiff, and upon trying to loosen it up, it ended up snapping. And as the Pharaons won't work, I didn't have any other spare Locust bodies that would work with Bowser's almighty meathead. So I had a look through the many boxes of parts, figures and items to see what custom I could create for this month. I was going to create the second member of the New Day, the wrestling tag trio that appeared in the 5th game's multiplayer, having the parts for both Kofi and Big E. But due to recently using pink and it kicking my ass, figuratively, I decided against making one for now, but they are coming soon. I decided against creating a custom figure and instead remembered that my good friend LJ from Gears of War Figures and Customs 3D printed me some goodies. So another shout out to LJ, who's had a few shout outs already. So today's video will be a little different, and instead of being a custom figure, it will be a custom weapon accessory. And what exactly is that I have ready to paint? Upscaled cleavers. So let's get straight to painting these cleavers. So before I start on the upscale cleavers, I have a cleaver from NECA that came with the Savage Pharaon figure from the Gears of War 3 line. These weapons look great, have great detail on them, and the paint application is really nice. The only issue of course is the scale of these cleavers. I have a few of these spare, so I wanted to customize one of them by adding a little extra detail. The paint for the blood on the edge of the blade looks good, but it almost looks dry. I wanted to have one that looked freshly used and soaked in the blood of a recent victim, so I used my technical blood for the blood god paint from Citadel to give the blade its wet blood look. I tried to paint the blood on as naturally as possible, without it looking too uniform by doing random strokes along the edge of the blade. The camera doesn't really capture the proper look and effect this paint gives off, but the paint dries glossy, giving it a reflective layer, which gives the look of wet blood. So this is the upscaled printed cleaver that was printed for me. The detail was captured perfectly and looks great for a 3D printed item. The main thing that stands out is the size, as it is considerably larger than what NECA gave us, which I honestly question. In game, these cleavers are massive compared to the Pharaons wielding them. So why NECA gave us short-ass ones I don't understand. Perhaps cheaper to produce smaller versions, but regardless, it was a pet peeve that I, and I assume a lot of other collectors had. Hence why someone made a larger scale. This is one of the few instances where size does matter, and when I compare the two you can see how much of a difference in scale there is between the two, while also keeping all that great detailing. So once again, thank you LJ. I got 4 of these cleavers printed, as I wanted 2 to go to my Savage Pharaons and giving them an accurate scaled weapon. Another will be added to my Pharaon Realm custom, and the 4th is to another custom I have not yet made. As these are larger, I didn't want them to have the same paint scheme as the smaller official variants, so I decided to use dark brown for the base of the handle, which when all other paint is added should give it a nice weathered look. At least that's my plan. We'll see if it works. I give the handle a thick layer and use my brush to spread the paint across all sides, giving the handle an uneven look, which when dry give the handle a used look. I repeated the exact same colour and painting technique for all 4 cleavers, although I originally wanted each blade to be unique. I also want them to be vaguely similar as they would have been when created. At this point in the painting, the blood I had painted on the NECA cleaver had dried, and I was hoping that the camera would pick up the effect a lot better after it had dried. You can see a bit of the effect with the blood being reflected. If you used the same paint before, then you are aware of how great it is to use and how great it looks when finished. I use the lightest brown I have, and give the handle a light dry brushing. I cover all sides of the handle. I do this in all directions to give it a messy rough look. as again, these weapons are meant to have been used a fair bit, and I don't want it looking too clean. I do the exact same for all 4 handles. I use a third brown to paint along the straps that wrap around the handle, giving the look of leather or fabric wrapping around. I'm not too fussed at this stage about being too neat, as it all goes towards the final worn look, and I've still got a few more weathering steps to do. And I'm sure that by now you can tell I did the exact same thing for all 4 cleavers. If you didn't guess, have you been paying attention? Probably not, my robotic voice is enough to send anyone into a daze. When the paint is low on the brush, I give certain patches a bit of a light dry brushing, just to give it a bit of depth on the colour. The hilt of the handle I paint in my steel paint, which hopefully makes it look as if the centre of the handle is metal and wrapped in fabric and leather for a bit more grip and comfort. And again, this is repeated for all 4 cleavers. Using the same steel paint, which is the darker one of the 2 I have, I move on to the main part of the cleaver, the blade. I give it a thin layered coating, as having some of the black creep through the paint really helps give it the look of a worn and used blade by making it look a little grimy and dirty. I cover the blades as uneven as I can to stop it looking too uniform and too clean. I was debating on whether or not to have one looking brand new and clean, with having some of the detailing on the blade painted in reds and yellows, but decided against it. Maybe a project for another time. I paint both sides and edges on all 4 cleavers. I stated earlier that I used the darker steel colour for the blade. I used the lighter one to do some detailing and dry brushing on certain parts of the blade, hitting all the raised areas and paying a lot of attention to certain areas on the blade to give the effect of worn steel in areas that would look like they would have been used more heavily. So far they are looking pretty good. The weathering effects give it that little extra detail which really makes it stand out. I used my brass paint to paint the rings on the hilt of the handle. I could have done this with the same steel and it would have given the exact same look. I just wanted a bit of variety in the colour. And of course, catchphrase, repeated for all 4 cleavers. I decided to use the brass for the neck of the cleaver too, again just to give the weapon a bit of variety. I'm not too sure if this part of the weapon is metal anyway, I just wanted to paint it brass, god damn it. This is how the cleavers look, without any additional detailing, and the necker cleaver is there too. So far these are looking great. They may not be perfect and certainly don't look the same as the official ones, as I gave it a different look, but that was intentional. I want to give the 2 scaled weapons a different look, so they look like 2 different weapons, as I'll be using the smaller cleavers as more of a dagger or a knife for the figures. This cleaver will be going to my Theron Rahm figure, which is a Rahm in his early days of his military career before he became the general we all love to fear. While Rahm was a Theron, he rose quickly through the ranks, and during that time he was as brutal as ever, and I want his cleaver to represent that. He will wield this weapon alongside other weapons, using this to brutalise his victims, and to show that off I decided to give it a good layer of blood using my Blood God paint. I do a thin layer which I hope gives off dried blood look when the paint dries, and then go over it with a thick layer to hopefully give the look of wet fresh blood stained on the blade. The second cleaver I decided that I wanted to give it a bit of a personal touch to the handle in terms of the custom figure that will wield it. This cleaver will be given to a custom Theron I have planned that I am excited to build, but due to how complex it is, for me at least, I'm waiting for my skill set to improve before approaching it. I simply just paint the straps on the handle black. This weapon will have further detailing added to it when it comes to making it for the custom. I don't want to add those bits just yet, but don't worry, it'll all be worth the wait, I hope. Third cleaver will be going to one of the Savage Therons I have from NECA. The blade has some scratching detailing on the blade and a bit of discolouring on certain parts of the blade. The final cleaver will go to my second Theron, and the blade has a bit of rust wear on the blade to help with the savage and run-down feel of Gears 3. So that is it for today's video. Thank you for joining me and seeing me paint my custom cleavers. Hopefully I'll have the Bowser custom for you soon, as I'm excited to get that one started. If you are interested in seeing these weapons used in some photo shoots, then don't forget to join me on my socials, Facebook, Instagram, and all that jazz. Thank you once again, and as always, stay safe.